This is MyBlend Stories, and I'm Jeff Gerlach. Cresta Wright is the Instructional Technology Coordinator at Pennfield Public Schools in Battle Creek. Her career in education actually started in Pennfield as a classroom teacher. Here, she was dabbling in blended learning well before the phase had much buzz at all. Between her Pennfield tenures, she was a technology integration specialist at Union City Community Schools. Cresta and I talked about shifting from a consulting to coaching mentality while working with teachers. How growing up in an agricultural environment shaped her understanding of teaching and learning from an early age, and the unexpected learning that can happen when you share your work, no matter how good you think it is. This is her story. Is my voice being heard?
Yes. Is mine?
Yes, your voice was always heard. Thanks for being patient. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. It leads into a lot of learning, and sometimes failure's healthy. You learn some things from it.
I learn every single day then, because
Me too. Oh no, my lights just went off. They're on a sensor. Yeah, so you were saying you learn every single day?
Yeah, because I go through a lot of failure like that. It's interesting when you're used to having something work every single time, and then you got to troubleshoot it, right? So
yeah, especially when you're the one showing someone how to do something and it doesn't work.
I wonder, do you go through that a lot? Like you feel like you should be an expert in some capacity, and like I know that I keep that. I do try to keep that mentality that we're all learners together and that everyone is going to make mistakes and we just need to help pick each other up. But I think it's hard to when you are considered to be the person that's leading a training or the coach in the relationship. Do you experience that a lot?
Sometimes when I first moved, I would say more from consulting to coaching type mentality, I was more worried about it or struggled with it a little bit more and things like that. And I'm not saying that nervousness isn't there. You know, even doing this today, I was a little bit nervous because what if my technology didn't work or what have you, because we're meeting for the first time. And that first impression can sometimes be good or bad, you know, based on the fact that I'm supposed to be in that position of someone who knows how to use this. But the people I work with and the memories and the experiences I've grown from, you know, their ideas drive my ideas, and I often learn from them as much as they learn from me, whether it have been my students in the classroom or teachers I work with now, administrators. So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing, or if I do feel that way, I just have to remind myself, you know, we're all learning together, as you said, and it's okay. Like, we'll learn from it. And to model being able to shoot from the hip or roll with the changes as they come up in front of other people, I think is not a bad thing. I try to keep in mind that the word fail, if you break down the letters, it could be first attempt in learning.
I like that.
If I learn something new, then from a fail, then it's not always a bad thing.
Absolutely. I feel like since I don't know you very well, I just want to start off in introducing myself. I'm an instructional designer at Michigan Virtual University, and I really function more in the role of a blended learning coach. So it's interesting. I was having this conversation in podcast form, and you heard it even with Andrew Shaver. And he was just saying how much of an influence you were on his career arc, and just as a really trusted mentor and colleague, and then he's here today. In meeting, they're doing a Quality Matters training, and he's here today. And I said, I'm doing this interview with you today, and he said, oh, good, Cresta contacted me, about doing this and what you think and everything. And I'm wondering how that conversation went.
As far as the why it prompted or how we started was we were in the same spot at a conference, and it was something I brought up just in passing in the hallway and asked him about the whole experience for him, because as I said earlier, this was something that I don't normally spend my day podcasting to the world. So
Yeah.
it was something I wanted to know a little bit more about. The cautious side of me did, and then the experimental side of me, the risk taker in me, wanted to be like, yeah, I'm all in. So,
Yeah.
the conversation just was short, sweet, to the point, and Andrew and I have communicated for years, and he was, actually I was his assigned mentor when he started working at Pennfield.
Okay.
And I bring that up only because really it's been my mentors who have helped shape me. And as I reflected back on some of my story with blended learning and whatnot, the list of mentors that I have is just phenomenal. And it's people like Andrew in my network that bring a difference to the table. So, when someone hires me or someone works with me, they don't just get me, they get my passions for education and agriculture and my network people that I can always reach out to.
That's awesome. And
wait, could I go turn on my lights again?
I'm just going to use the audio only. So
okay, good. Because the motion sensor in this room, it'll just keep going out every 10 minutes, which is kind of awesome for Earth Day.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing, but it's going to prohibit me from seeing some of the notes or some of the things that I might otherwise miss. So if you don't mind, I'll turn it back on.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, sorry about that. It might happen again. I don't move around enough. I guess I got to sit here and move around.
That's totally fine. And I don't know how Skype calls usually are on bandwidth for you. I've actually found that it might just be my ears playing tricks on me. The audio quality is better if I shut my video off. So do you want to go ahead and do that?
Sure.
If I could just start off, walk us through what got you into education and kind of how you got to the point where you're at now.
Education, I guess I've never been out of education because, I went to public school as a kid in a small town. I grew up on a agricultural farm, so a lot of what I did every day was learning and different things with agriculture, and so I'm passionate about education and agriculture because I see some parallel items with them. And so when I was deciding, what I was going to do with my life, I guess I chose education after after looking at a couple other options of joining the service or being an engineer, just different things. And education for me was something that I'm passionate about because I enjoy being a lifelong learner and that continuous improvement, striving for understanding the next thing or reading some research or learning from another person. And as I met new people and experienced new things, read new things, and essentially grew as a lifelong learner, I understood, concepts like collaboration, accessibility, design, sustainability, all those kinds of things are important no matter what you do or what industry you're in. So that's agriculture, education, military, regardless. And I just thought, I guess, early on, wow, I guess I'm passionate about learning new things, and maybe I could help others learn new things too.
I'm thinking about, growing up in an agricultural setting. You categorizing it as a learning environment. There's so much. We talk so much about authenticity in learning environments and authentic learning interactions, right? And really, growing up in that space, I'm thinking a lot of the lessons have to be this is just this is a reality. Like, if I don't know how to do something, I need to figure out how to do it, right? I can't just say, well, I don't know how to do it. I don't, and excuse me if I'm offensive in any sort of way, but like, when I'm growing up, no one knows how to milk a cow out of the womb, right? Like, it's but you can't just, it's a skill that you learn hands-on, right? And the way that mentorship and experience come together in that, I don't really even know where I'm going with that, but I'm just kind of fascinated with that concept. You know what I mean? It's a very it gets back to the roots of what education is. Like, you can learn by being told what to do. You can learn by doing, and there's a synergy between a mentor and a learner in that situation, and sometimes the lines blur. And hearing you talk about how you value people around you, the relationships, the learning engagements that you partake in, where, you know, there's teachers and there's learners, but sometimes one is the other, right? You switch roles constantly. We're always the teacher can learn from the student in a lot of ways. No, that's just an interesting reality that you talk about there. So how does technology come along and become an important part of your educational life?
Yeah, so after I graduated college and got a job and stuff, the first district I'd like to talk about is actually Pennfield Schools. And I didn't already say this, but I am the current Instructional Technology Coordinator for Pennfield Schools in Battle Creek, Michigan. And I started first dabbling in a lot of technology at that school as a teacher in the classroom. So this is my second time being a Panther, if you will. And I got started with all the technology stuff, early pilots, you know, pioneering new things from those like Palm pilots or online attendance grade books. I had one computer in my room so I could pilot some of that stuff, and, you know, flash drives, and I had some calculators because I taught mathematics and things like that. So it was just that early start in a Pennfield classroom that our coordinator at the time, his name was Tim, got me started with, and just doing some things, and built a relationship with him. He would be, you know, a mentor at the time and all that stuff. And then a couple years into that, so I'd been at Pennfield for a few years, and we had been told that Tim was going to take a new position in the district, and we were going to hire a new technology coordinator. So that took place, and in 2005, Tammy McGinnity, who is the current McCall president, so you might have heard her name, became the Pennfield Instructional Technology Coordinator. And she's been a big mentor for me. And, you know, I continued to pioneer and cutting-edge pilots and doing things with Moodle or an LMS of any kind, but ours was Moodle, and started to just do a lot of what I would call the buzzwords are today, like try flipping or blending, or hey, how do you give your kids immediate feedback with a PowerPoint? You know, just basic stuff that you think of today that was in its beginning stages then.
Yeah.
Because in 2005, you know, Google Apps for Education didn't exist, you know,
right,
when Tammy and I started working together. And so some of those things that have evolved now, we were doing then. It just didn't have such a buzz around it. And that's what's exciting now, is there's so many opportunities, conferences, networks. I mean, you take like Discovery Education and it went from streaming to a network. Or you take McCall, had 5,000 people at the conference this year, stuff like that, that just to me is really exciting, that there's buzz, there's like a momentum around this new authentic learning spaces and creativity and design and collaboration and stuff like that. So that's where my journey started. was, I would say, in those early stages of the Pennfield classrooms, working with a couple coordinators who are still my mentors today. And then it continued from there. I don't know how much further you want me to keep talking or if you have a different question, but, this goes on through several more years. So
let's go ahead and talk about it. Cresta, I got to tell you, I love the way that you craft a story. It's really cool to be able to just follow along with it. Just to interject and maybe give you some time to breathe. I know Tammy, obviously because of her role with McCall, but I was also a student in one of the certificate courses for the MAET program at MSU that she was an instructor for. So I was a member of her class, and I don't really. The certificate courses in that program weren't as interactive as once I decided I wanted to do my master's degree with them. I got to know the instructors a lot more as I progressively into more classes. And I don't know if that's just the nature of a lot of the certificate courses, I think, at that time anyway, were taught by people that were actually in schools, right? Like they're not PhD candidates at MSU. They're like Tammy was at Pennfield doing her day job and then being a superwoman and being able to teach a graduate level course at night.
Yeah, it brings a certain level of empathy to that position when they're your teacher too. And that's a good segue into my next part of it is I'm also a MATE grad. I went through the program a little bit before you, but some of my mentors there from even like having Punya Mishra for TPAC and design and different classes and things like that. Tammy, for certificate classes, like you said. So she's the one who introduced me to the idea that MSU even had a program. And when I took it, though, you had to go to the campus, So now that I guess they have like a hybrid and then like an all online, and you got a lot more options these days. So that's really cool.
One of the big reasons why I was even interested in educational technology to begin with is this idea of lowering the barriers of participation and the way that a program could be customized by students by being able to do it all face-to-face for those that obviously had regional accessibility to get to East Lansing on a semi-regular basis and craved that face-to-face interaction. But then also, the ability to do a hybrid model that would give you the best of both worlds. And really, I mean, now that I think about it, living and working in a blended learning space and mindset, that's what I'm doing today. Even though I wasn't even thinking about that back then. But I did complete online and felt like I had never thought of how much humanistic quality could be encapsulated in an online course. And I think that's something that, and I've said it in past podcasts even, but I'll say it again. It's when I was participating in those courses, I was amazed at the possibility to connect with like-minded individuals in the context of, canonal research like a TPAC from you brought up Punya, and have conversation all around these great educational technology learning theories and just learning theories in general, and thinking about how to apply educational technology to really great learning theory. But like beyond all of that stuff can be quite intimidating if you have an online course that feels more like an archive of knowledge rather than an environment where there are real live people that you can grow with, become acquainted with, right?
Yeah, the connectivity and interaction is key. I was recently also a REMC blended learning in the classroom instructor, And so I worked with, a ton of different educators of all places in the lower Michigan area, central area, and it makes a huge difference when they're interacting right within that learning management system, or whether they're, chatting live or having discussion forums or just different things that give them that connection. And it's really nice when I run into the students that I had in the Blick course, because they still say like, oh, you helped me with this, or I still talk with so-and-so from our class. And I just like that those connections can be made online, like you said. And I remember back when Tammy joined our staff, and back in 2005 at Pennfield, and she said, she asked me a question, and then I asked her a question, and my question went something like, well, what else could I do in a math class with technology? And her answer to me was, a lot.
Yeah.
and I, at the time I was like, I guess I just gave her a loaded question. And then, now I look back and I was like, that was such a naive question. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I still feel that way today. That's why I'm still passionate, and I've mentioned earlier about being a lifelong learner, because the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And whether that be from people online, my network on social media or Twitter or what have you, or in a blended course or through the MATE program, those connections are real still today, even if I've never seen them face to face, or if I've only seen them face to face months at a time or years in between.
I don't know if you feel the same way I do, but I got a sneaky suspicion that you do, because we were talking about this failure, vulnerability, and like the very cautious, controlled side of me, and the exploratory, excited, adventurous part of me are always in this constant conflict when I come into online learning spaces, especially informal learning environments like social media. Not only do I think about my own personal social media presence now, I think of from an organizational standpoint, like what we're putting out there and what kind of questions we're asking. And
oh yeah, even today I feel like I'm representing Pennfield. I'm representing the school I was at before this, which is Union City, and I'm representing Michigan State.
Yeah. And so that's a heavy burden to carry, right? You can't let it be something that is tape over your mouth. If we are fearful of putting something out there, and I guess we could make it a real example, and I'll just, because this is on my mind, we were talking about the reach of this podcast in general, and we were talking about how in a social media space, like on Twitter as an example, I hate spammers, right? Like I hate people that are completely self-serving and want you just to listen or interact with their stuff. It's especially against the spirit of education in doing something in an educational context. Like I just want to put stuff out there that puts our thoughts in a public space, right? I'm really big on this idea of thinking publicly, thinking in the open. And so because I feel that way, like I want to put all my warts out there and all my good ideas out there at the same time, right? Like I'm just going to dump this out there. What do you think about it? And let's go. And that's the whole premise of doing this podcast, is talking to really great educators like yourself who have had these experiences that might have otherwise been behind closed doors. Like people at Pennfield know who you are, people in your social circles know who you are, and I'm not disillusioned to think that excuse me, not disillusioned to think that me having a podcast as a platform is going to magically share your story with exponentially more people, right? Like that's not that'd be delusions of grandeur, right? And it's not the intent of doing it anyway. It's just doing my little part to try to put more ideas out there. But at the same time, I've got this other side of me that's saying, like, no, like, we got to make sure that this is polished, and you got to make sure that you have a cohesive message that you're going for. And when we put it out there, let's only put it out there one time in one tweet. Like, we don't want to get excessive. We don't want to get too self-promotional. If people really want this kind of stuff, they'll seek it out. But I was thinking yesterday, I was like, what if I only put one tweet out and a person that could otherwise benefit from it misses it? There's this thing where, like, educators, I think, are extremely humble about what they do to the point where it's almost self-deprecating because they don't share what they do. And I don't know if you recognize that in yourself or even recognize that in your teachers, or even if you think it's an issue that's worth talking about. But it's something that I've been thinking about lately.
Well, when I share or don't share, or, I'll focus on the share, I just keep in mind it's a snapshot of what's going on in that moment, in that time, in that segment. And what I would have shared early back in my teaching days in the classroom versus how it then evolved. So fast forward, I'm teaching in the classroom at Pennfield in 2007, and the district went through, putting up a new high school, bringing in a one-to-one program. It's called PULL, stands for Power Up Learning, things like that. And what I would have shared as a person going through the trenches in my first one-to-one experience would have maybe been a different snapshot than I would have shared prior to that or after that. Even now that I work in the same one-to-one similar program that's evolved over years of work. And I just have to keep in mind that if it helps someone, I'm glad I shared it. I just might not know who that someone is. But then sometimes you're nicely surprised and someone will contact you and they'll say, thank you so much for this, or they'll favorite your stuff, like you mentioned on Twitter or whatever. And so when I think about it, I think it's worth talking about. I've started many different types of ways to share, and sometimes they just die. Like, I think I've got 3 dead blogs. So it's not that it's not worth talking about. I just think it's a snapshot of what you're going through at that moment, whether it be, again, in the educational field, or for me, I was a family farm owner for 5 years as well. So even in agriculture, there's things that are happening that parallel for technology purposes that, we couldn't do back then that we can do now, or what have you, and working with crops. So GPS has changed the way that you can precision plant and anticipate your inputs, and drone scouting over fields instead of having to drive through them and wreck half your yield. I mean, there's all different kinds of things. And then in the classroom, like I was saying, when we went one-to-one, I was this teacher who was like, all right, I've got 33 geometry students in front of me, and every kid has a laptop today, and they didn't yesterday. Yeah. So what is that like for me? And I shared all the time. I consulted my way through for a couple of years because people just wanted, how do you fix this? How do you do that? And, that was some involvement for me from moving from the classroom to the Instructional Technology Coordinator position that I'm in today. And prior to that, I was a technology integration specialist at Union City. So, I've worked with a large network of people and different types of one-to-one programs, because Union City is also one-to-one. Okay. K-12, actually. And, I had some mentors there as well. And it's just, I have so much to share. Sometimes I think, even when you asked me to do this podcast, I was like, where do I start? Yeah. Yeah. So for me, sometimes it's more about which snapshot do I want to share. I don't know if that was a lot of S's. Which snapshot do I want to share? And where do I start? Yeah.
No, basically what I took from you, like if I got to chill out, right? Like you're only one person and you can only do what you can. And you can only think of what you think about right now in this moment. And tomorrow you're going to have another opportunity to think about what more you can do. Because both of our struggles is not like how can we become popular and become rock stars and things like that. The whole reason why you want to share is because you want to help, right? And
Yes.
and so it's like don't get too stressed out about your limitations right now. Really think about what it is of value that you have to share that's great. And then share it in the way that you see fit. And someone will find it if it's valuable. I get this anxiety that like someone who could potentially find it valuable will not find it. So I'm always in this pursuit of the holy grail of social share outs, right?
I'm sorry, that sounds exhausting.
It does, doesn't it?
And I can't say the thoughts haven't crossed my mind, but I try to put the brakes on those type of thoughts and take a breath. You have to take your time and relax a little, enjoy the moment, because otherwise I think if you worry about reaching 100% of the population, you will not sleep.
No, you're right. And headaches follow, and your personal health struggles, and your relationships with the ones that you love suffer because you're on your phone or you're on your computer trying to finish up this one last thing that was sticking in your brain today that you couldn't figure out. And you spread yourself so thin that you don't become as effective as you could be on that one thing, right?
Yeah, Tammy and I are always joking how when people just say, how's your day? Oh, I'm busy. Well, we're all busy.
Yeah.
And like that's just a simple answer to keep moving on. But I would say, yeah, personally and professionally, there's those things that you have to pick your battles. And, do you need it perfect or do you need it Tuesday? I think is one of like the slogans out there today and in the tech Smith world or something like that. And I really have to remind myself of that because as I was saying back in 2007, when we went one-to-one and I started being a partner in our family farm, in our agricultural business and stuff like that, it was a big year of change for me. And I was then had to be passionate about, as you were saying, your own healthy way and, holistically helping yourself to be available for the people you work with or serve. And had to think about, like you were saying, in the MATE program when you took it, there were people who were really teaching, and what's more authentic than someone who's been in your position. And just keeping those things in mind when you communicate with people and when you try to be self-directed or help others be self-directed. And technology allows me to do all the things that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to do, and I would have been so anxiously overwhelmed, as you were saying for yourself, that that's where some of the big change for me came, is I saw this opportunity in blended learning and the fact that design mattered and that I needed to incorporate some of that interactivity into my design as an instructional I guess at the time I was probably a sage on the stage, is the term people use today. Instead of, what I wanted to be was more of a facilitator, activator type person. And that's, I was in the middle of, or I was wrapping up my MATE program, and I was just doing all these things in that year that it was a huge eye-opener for me to think about some of the things you brought up today and to realize, aha, I'm not going to use technology just because it serves this cool new shiny bandwagon. I'm going to use it because there's a purpose and there's a reason that I can reach more of an audience, or I can think about, much of my early design was assuming that all kids or all staff in this case now will attend school and work every day, and they'll be there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the case at all. And when I did some of that early stage flipping, or make it available for them anytime, any place, anywhere, those kinds of things. It was like a light bulb of being able to take a breath and relax and enjoy the moment of learning in the classroom with the kids, or now in this case for me with the staff.
I like where you took that. The perfectionist in all of us wants to sees the whole picture, especially when you're a teacher or in higher up. I mean, a teacher, you're responsible for the learning of all your students, right? When you're in a tech leadership role, you're responsible for the mastery of technology use in education, right? And it could be a daunting thing that you can see this big picture and you feel like you have to check all the boxes to get there. But when you're talking about blended strategies in general and that greater control for the learner over pace, place, path, time, and all of that kind of stuff that you're talking about, you're not the keeper of everything. You're part of, you're a puzzle piece, and you have to allow everyone else to see themselves in the puzzle. If you're putting together a puzzle for everyone, it doesn't serve the purpose of learning. And really, I mean, so when we're thinking about blended strategies, that's what drew me to blended strategies as well. It's like, wow, I'm so much more efficient because I can offload a lot of this responsibility. And yeah, this is shiny and I want to get on the bandwagon because it's kind of cool. But I'm also seeing the empowerment that is in my students to lead things. And they take things in directions that I didn't necessarily think that they would go, but it's okay because it was great that it went there. And you start to flesh it out that way. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree with you, because sometimes I felt like the more I interfered with their learning experience, the worse the products were.
Yeah.
And the more that sometimes I just let them have a little more freedom or work with each other, so I didn't start out this way, but I was one of those teachers who said, formative assessment today? Sure, you can take that in a group.
Yeah.
Learn from each other, and different things. So,
well, I feel like life is a formative assessment. We were talking about every time we fail, we learn something new. I mean, that's what a formative assessment is, right? It's learning, and really, instead of yes, we intentionally put in. I mean, we've got to think critically about developing what a competency looks like, what will be demonstrated to or what is being demonstrated to demonstrate mastery, right? And we can get that, and we can think critically about this skeletal structure that we're gonna put in place to try to, I'm thinking about a project-based setting, a problem-based learning setting where the power of inquiry is really guiding these things. But really, the greatest checking for understandings that I've ever seen is when I set this into motion and I'm floating around a classroom, hardly seeing like I'm doing anything, but I'm listening to conversations that students are having as they're working through something together. Listen to the struggle, listen to the eureka moments, and kind of just be there to push things and be a resource if you're needed, and stay the heck out of the way if you're not.
Yeah, sometimes listening is the best gift you can give someone else too, for them to make that discovery.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways I'm having that moment right now because.
Well, good. I'm glad I could help you.
Well, I mean, you're a great listener in that sense, and sometimes you just need to talk your thoughts out and hear them for yourself. And a great person who understands them on the other side that says, yeah, have you also considered this? Or this happened to me. A good teaching learning relationship really feels like a really good conversation in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those relationships are key, whether you're working with a teenager, a second grader, and I'm in all different types of classrooms. And some of those classrooms and jobs look very different, but the relationship is a piece of it that's not different. And so even when I'm working with staff and things like that, those relationships are key. That's why when I left the Pennfield classroom, it was very difficult because I was leaving some of those relationships. And when the MATE program, you do your capstone and you're over, you're kind of bummed because you're leaving some of those relationships. But technology can allow them to continue. And then the same when I worked at Union City, it was a very difficult decision to leave another set of relationships, and from their one-to-one program too, which was outstanding. And now that I'm back at Pennfield, what I've realized in that taking that risk was now I've built even more relationships with this network here. So the relationships all across the board in a lot of fashion are key, I think.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up anything, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about anything that really excites you right now that you're working on that we haven't talked about already.
Yeah, I've said a lot of excitement, I guess. But I'm always working on a lot of different things, and implementing a new data warehouse, for example, is like just something that's got to be done. And it's always exciting to have new things. But with that comes a learning curve. And, with a more robust tool and more options and things like that, I naturally get to continue to build those relationships. So that's one thing that has to be done that I'm working on.
Okay.
And some things that go along with that is it's really exciting through those relationships or through, people coming off the McCall conference, because we had quite a big group go today. I still get stopped in the hallway, or I get emails, or I get tweets, or just different things about, hey, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. So, so many other people's ideas in my network give me ideas, and the generation of ideas are always ongoing. And whether it be changing some learning spaces, continuing my own lifelong learning, helping others with their lifelong learning, talking with you, things that continually kind of redefine the possibilities of what we can do in industries like education, agriculture, a few others, but I'll stick to the two that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
are just really good. I think about, had I chose the military and what it's like for them, like what we're doing right now. You can Skype from abroad, you can FaceTime, you can have those different things, and to me those feelings and passions can't be ignored when you see them, and they're just inspiring. That some of the things technology can give accessibility to, whether it be a person hearing for the first time, or seeing someone and you haven't seen in 6 months, or whatever it might be, I'm always going to be passionate about that. So technology in general is just something I'm passionate about, and I don't mean just computers. I mean like the fact that any tool could be technology.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, how long do you want me to talk?
I am super sensitive to the fact that you are a busy person. So I don't want to keep you forever, but in a certain way I want to talk to you forever. And I don't mean that just to say nice things. I really appreciate, like, this is our first time meeting each other. So it's like there's a lot of avenues I'd like to explore. Something that I think is amazing of what you talk about, I won't say that this is dominant anymore, but it used to be that there was this huge fear of, and maybe that's still the case, I'm just going to throw it out there, that technology replaces things, that technology can replace teachers, that technology that dulls our humanity. And in a lot of ways, it definitely those are not lies, right? They could be realities, but they're not definite realities. The way that you talk about the use of technology, not just in learning, but our daily lives, which really looks a lot like learning when you think about it.
Yeah, imagine that.
It's an extension. They can really be used as an extension of our humanity. And they can take our humanity to places that we otherwise couldn't have seen before, that otherwise couldn't have been possible. You personally are not always looking at it as I want to jump on the bandwagon and do this new thing because I want to be on the cutting edge of trying out new techie things. It's like, imagine the possibilities that we can have for communicating with one another. Imagine what we can do to enhance these rich interactions that we already have, or imagine the rich interactions that is now possible that wasn't possible yesterday. And it's a lot less about like looking back and saying how archaic what we were doing yesterday was, or looking forward and imagining and really analyzing the deficiencies of today. You seem to really live in the moment of now and get excited about things that you see going on now, and how exciting it is that we can share our dreams with one another, and people can co-sign those dreams, can kind of jump on board and say, wow, that's a great idea. I think I might be able to help. And even if I can't help, I'm really excited about what you're doing, and I'm excited to try to see if I can apply it to my own situation. So like that whole vision is just, it's a really top level vision. We're not talking about specific tools or strategies or anything like that, but that kind of mindset to me is just such a, my mind's blown by like that kind of like worldview, right? So that's really cool.
I guess.
Yeah. I'm really good at asking questions that aren't questions, that are more of just me rambling. And then afterwards, you can't really say too much. But anyway, I told you I'd take up an hour of your time, and I've taken up an hour and 3 minutes plus a little bit. Thanks for rolling with me through my failures and helping me through them, helping me come out on the other side a more learned person.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me as part of your work setting and your MyBlend podcast.
Awesome. Well,
maybe another time will be when we talk tools and specifics and things, because, you know, as I asked you before, how long do you want me to talk? Because I do have some experience, and I do have that long list of mentors who you know, I can't say enough good things about. So there's maybe another podcast for that.
Absolutely. With M-Step and stuff going on right now, that it's probably not the most convenient month of the year that I picked to pick your brain, right? But
yeah, responsibilities are heightened right now.
Yeah.
Due to some standardized needs.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Well, thanks so much, and I'll be in contact, and can't wait to learn more from you in the future.
All right, sounds great.
Thanks for listening to MyBlend Stories. For more, visit myblend.org.